If you're just getting started with a podcast, you might wonder what kind of format or what kind of type of podcast can I create? In this video, we're going to walk through 8 different formats or types of podcasts you can consider if you're just starting a new show. Let's dive in. Hey there, Craig Hewitt here from Cohost. In this video, we're going to walk through the 8 different styles or formats of podcasts that you can consider for your show, whether you're just starting a new podcast and you've never done this before, or you're looking to spice up an existing show and explore different formats and layouts and things for your audience so they can enjoy more of your content, but in just a little different way. Number 1 on our list is the interview format. It's probably the most popular that you've seen out there. It's been going for a really long time and is really great for a couple of reasons. Number 1, the format's pretty simple. You're the host and you have a guest and you ask them questions. Some of the challenges with this is that there's a fair amount of work for you to do each episode. You have to find a guest, you have to invite them onto your podcast, even if you're using a calendar booking tool like SavvyCal or Calendly. You have to research your guests so you can ask them really good questions. So while an interview-based show is really nice because you get to leverage your guest's audience and them sharing the episode after it goes live, it is a bit of a logistical challenge. So if this is the format you want to go down, I would encourage you to really get your system and process down for how you're going to find those guests and invite them on. There's a really great website called podcastguests.com. I would check that out. It's probably going to be a really great resource in you finding high quality guests who have been on other podcasts and can be on your show as well. Last thing I'll mention about interviewing is it's a skill, just like anything else. And so if you haven't done this before, it might be something that frankly you're not good at the beginning. And that's okay. Try your hardest, practice, really prepare for the interview. It goes a long way. And I think that you'll learn a lot after those first couple or 10 episodes to where you'll be able to guide the discussion, really understand what the person you're interviewing is talking about and what they're getting after. And you'll be a much better interviewer after a couple of episodes. Don't let fear stop you from getting started in the first place. The second format we're going to talk about is the monologue. So kind of like this. It's just me talking. Usually these are shorter episodes. These are somewhere in the 10 to maybe 20 minutes long, just because this is really hard. I'm looking and staring at the camera, or I'm just talking into the microphone, and it's hard. If you've not done this before, it's a skill that you probably don't have. And so developing that skill will take some time, frankly, and you'll have to get over a lot of kind of emotions and fear to do a solo or a monologue show. Nice thing about it is, contrasting to the interview, is there's no logistics. Whenever you have time, you sit down, you flip on the microphone or the camera and you talk. There's probably going to be more post-process and editing afterwards because just you speaking is a little harder than bouncing energy off of a guest or a co-host. So keep that in mind, but a shorter episode duration might make up for that. The third format we're going to talk about is the co-host type show. This is how I got started with my podcast called Rogue Startups. Check it out if you'd like, where I talk with my co-host Dave Rodenbaugh all about our journey as entrepreneurs and as business owners. This is great because it's a routine. Every Monday we talk and we record for about 45 minutes. I know Dave really well at this point. We've been doing it for 5 years. Dave knows me really well, so the things that we talk about are not a reach. We don't have to explore and discover and research each other as guests. We know each other really well, and our audience knows us. So every time they tune in, it's like getting a letter from a friend. Hey, what's going on with Craig and Dave these days? What's new in their show or in their businesses? What's going on in the show? I'm keen to tune in and hear what's going on. So I find, as the host of one of these kinds of shows, that people are really looking forward to the next episode because they want to hear what the next step in my journey is. So this is really interesting because it builds a pretty loyal following and fan base that I think an interview-based show might not do. So that's just one consideration for a co-host-based show. I will say, when considering who to have as a co-host, you want someone who complements you, not be exactly like you, kind of like finding a spouse. You want someone who's a complement to you, not just another version of you, having the same business, having the same background and perspectives and things like that. That little bit of spice adds a lot to the show where you and your co-host bounce energy and ideas and perspectives around and off of each other. And I think the audience really gets a lot out of that. The fourth format of podcasts we're going to talk about are nonfiction storytelling. So these are podcasts that are about real life, actual examples, and people are telling these stories usually from like a historical perspective. So examples of this are This American Life, S-Town, and Radio Lab. right? They're telling stories as they're happening a lot of times. These are maybe kind of like current events almost, but they're telling real life stories shortly after they happen. Usually they aren't typically like historical podcasts, and they're offering a bit of like perspective and dialogue around them. I will say from a production effort perspective, this might be one of the hardest ones because there's a ton of research and background that you have to gather on these events that have just happened. So as you're thinking about the difficulty level of the type of podcast you're willing to undertake, consider that this one might have a little more work to do up front, but this could be a really good evergreen kind of fixed series for you to do. You could do an 8-part or 12-part series. How to Start a War is a good example of this, right? Really popular podcast done during the pandemic, and it's just a fixed series that'll never be more than that. It's 8 or 12 episodes. So just something to consider. If you want to do a bunch of research and pre-production work, this might be the format for you. The 6th format that we're going to talk about is something like Serial. So if you're old like me, you might remember Serial from, about 10 years ago, a story told sequentially over time by a single person. You might call this a narrative style podcast, where you as the person are telling a story over time and over a certain number of episodes of a single topic. A lot of times these will have many different threads and perspectives and sound bites woven in, and then you as the narrator or the storyteller of the podcast will give context and perspective and additional information about those sound bites that are happening. These are amazing to listen to. They're also incredibly difficult to produce, so probably not something for a beginner, but if you have a topic that you're really passionate about, this might be one for you. The 7th format that I want to talk about is repurposing other content. So this might be a bit of a sneaker, right? Like flying under the radar a little bit, but I think more and more these days as we talk with our Castos Productions customers, this is the format that a lot of people are going in. More and more people are saying, hey, I want a YouTube first kind of podcast where it's video first, and then I'll repurpose the audio for an audio format podcast. This kind of maybe is a subset of the other formats that I've talked about, but it's worth considering that, hey, if you already have a successful YouTube channel, or you're already doing something like Instagram Lives or something like that, think about, hey, how can I use that content and repurpose it as a format in a podcast, right? Because I think it's a very fair way to say, hey, I can have a podcast from the other content I'm already doing. You don't have to recreate the wheel or start this whole new kind of brand or media. You can just take what you're already doing and repurpose it as a podcast. The one thing I will warn you about here is you want to think about what's first, what's your first priority, right? If you already have a YouTube channel and you want to repurpose it as a podcast, just know that the way you interact with and engage with the camera and the microphone on a video podcast will be different than an audio first or audio only podcast. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but it'll just be a little different, so keep that in mind. Okay, and the 8th one is a bit of a wild card, is it can be whatever you want. Maybe it's a mix of some of the formats that we've talked about already. The beautiful thing about podcasting is it's the Wild West. There's no rules, there's no fixed box that you have to be in. You can create any kind of format that you want, and I would say as you become more and more an advanced podcaster, it's probably what you should do. Especially these days, to stand out, you need something really different. So think about how you can take a twist on one of these existing formats or structures of a podcast, give it your own spin, your own flavor. You'll really stand out that way. People will say, hey, did you hear this podcast? This was really super interesting. Having that in an existing, regular format that they've seen a lot may not happen. So I would encourage you, as you become a more experienced podcaster, to play around with different formats. One of our newest shows is a different format in that it's really short. The episodes are about 10 or 15 minutes. It's also video only. So we're doing this right now kind of in real time with our Limelight show. So encourage you to play around with the format, even within an existing podcast. Just say, hey, audience, we're going to be trying something new. For the next 4 episodes, we're going to do whatever it is, something different. It's fine. They're not going to hate you for it, and they may love you, and it may be that thing that unlocks massive growth for your show. Okay, I hope this is helpful in discussing the 8 different formats of podcasts that we consider here at Castos, and I hope that you enjoyed the video, are exploring some of these different formats for your show. Would love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment in below, and as always, like and subscribe if you're enjoying this to get every new video as soon as they're released. Happy podcasting. We'll see you soon.